A bitter dawn clawed at the frosted Alaskan wilderness. Ancient pines silhouetted like jagged teeth against a sapphire sky. The air, thin and sharp, bit at every exposed surface. A frigid breath escaped Dr. Lena Petrova, a veteran wildlife ethologist, clouding the space before her as her gaze fixed on the colossal, motionless form of KII, the dominant grizzly, by a half-frozen river. He was a creature of immense power, usually a whirlwind of instinct and territorial assertion. Yet today, a profound desolation held him captive. Kai's massive head was bowed, his posture a heavy slump never before witnessed in this apex predator, suggesting a deep internal suffering that defied explanation. Against the stark beauty of the landscape, his stillness felt like a wound. His huge, scarred paw rested on a specific patch of disturbed, half-frozen earth, a silent vigil maintained with an unnatural fidelity. This was the place where his mate, Lyra, had last been seen weeks ago, swept away by a sudden, brutal ice melt, her tracking signal gone silent. This wasn't merely instinct, it was a profound, impossible moment of remembrance. The question, can an animal truly grieve, hung heavy in the frigid air, challenging every scientific understanding Lena held, promising a journey deep into the wild heart of sorrow. Lena tightened the grip on her spotting scope, the metallic chill seeping through her gloves. Everything she had been taught, every peer-reviewed paper on bear behavior, screamed that Kai's reaction should be one of adaptation, of moving on to secure his own survival, not this prolonged, agonizing vigil. Yet, a profound sense of recognition, a primal ache resonated within her own chest. It was a sorrow she understood, a quiet despair that transcended species. She saw not just a bear, but a sentinel of loss. A flicker of sunlight caught the ice-rimmed branches, momentarily pulling her back to a memory. Kai and Lyra, sun-drenched and vibrant, wrestling playfully in a summer meadow, their roars of mock aggression echoing with an undeniable tenderness. Lyra had been Kai's shadow, his counterpart, their shared territory, a testament to their unbreakable bond. The image vanished, replaced by the present, by Kai's hunched form. The scientific community would scoff, her colleagues would advise caution, call it anthropomorphism, a projection of human emotion onto a creature of pure instinct. But Lena's intuition, honed by years in the wild, screamed otherwise. This was different. This was beyond the predictable rhythms of the wild. She would dedicate herself to understanding, to observing, no matter the skepticism. Her pack was heavy, laden with equipment, a testament to the isolating path she was choosing. With a quiet resolve settling deep in her observant eyes, Dr. Lena Petrova began setting up her remote observation post, her every movement deliberate, as Ki remained a solitary, hunched figure in the distance. Lena spent the frigid Alaskan nights poring over screens, the blue glow of her monitor illuminating the small, cramped observation post. She revisited years of historical footage, searching for context, for an explanation beyond the simple, brutal arithmetic of the wild. There, on the pixelated display, Kai emerged from the shadows, not as the desolate figure she now knew, but vibrant, colossal, utterly alive. Beside him moved Lyra, her coat a rich dark brown, her stride powerful and fluid. The old videos chronicled a unique partnership. Kai would often cede the choicest parts of a kill to Lyra, a rare deference in a dominant male. They moved together with an almost choreographed synchronicity, their massive bodies navigating shared hunting grounds, their calls echoing in mutual acknowledgement across the vast wilderness. Lyra would nudge Kai after a successful salmon run, a tender, possessive gesture, and Kai would tolerate it, even lean into it. Their mutual protectiveness was undeniable, particularly when cubs were nearby, though these cubs were not Lyra's. These were not just two bears occupying the same space. They were two lives deeply intertwined, an undeniable bond that transcended mere biology. She compiled meticulous log entries, the raw data starkly contrasting the vibrant life she'd just witnessed. Her detailed notes charted KI's deviations from normal behavior. Day 18. No successful foraging attempts, minimal movement, sustained periods of stillness near the riverbank where Lyra was last seen. Day 25. Vocalizations limited to low, guttural rumbles, utterly unlike previous territorial roars or mating calls. Day 32. Avoidance of prime berry patches, areas historically frequented by KAI and Lyra, shows clear preference for higher, barren ridges. Every entry deepened her conviction. A satellite phone buzzed, cutting through the quiet hum of her equipment. It was Dr. Ben Carter, a respected colleague, his voice crackling with professional caution. "Lena, I hear you're embedding yourself out there. About Kai, I understand the concern, but this behavior, it's likely a stress response. Hormonal imbalance, perhaps, given the season. Survival instincts kick in, they don't grieve." Ben's tone was measured, steeped in decades of accepted ethological doctrine. "We can't anthropomorphize Lena. It's dangerous for the science, and for you." Lena tightened her grip on the phone. "Ben, you didn't see him. The absence of typical behavior, the sustained, profound despondency, it's not a temporary stressor. It's an utter break from every pattern we've documented for KRI. I can't explain it with hormones." Her voice was quiet, but laced with an unshakable certainty. She felt a familiar weight of isolation settle, but it only sharpened her resolve. Then came the first symbolic visit. Lena watched Kai, through her high-powered binoculars, approach Lyra's favorite den site. It was an old, shallow cave, tucked beneath an ancient spruce, a place they'd often sheltered together from storms. Kai didn't enter. He merely sat, a colossal silhouette against the sapphire light of the late afternoon, his back to the biting wind. He sat for hours, facing the dark opening, an unwavering vigil. He watched it as if Lyra might emerge, as if the memory of her might coalesce from the shadows within. Lena gazed at Kai through her binoculars, seeing not just a bear, but a sentinel of sorrow, and reaffirming her commitment to understanding his truth. The truth Lena sought was not one that revealed itself quickly. It demanded patience, a deep immersion into the raw, unforgiving rhythm of the Alaskan wilderness. Weeks bled into months, each passing day etching new lines on the landscape, yet leaving Kai's profound desolation untouched. Late winter's biting frost yielded to the reluctant thaws of early spring, meltwater rushing in torrents through valleys where ice had held silent dominion. The world around them burst with the promise of renewal, early shoots pushing through damp earth, migrating birds returning with tentative songs. But Kai remained a solitary, hunched figure, a living monument to sorrow. His colossal frame, once rippling with untamed power, now showed subtle, dangerous signs of decline. His fur, typically thick and glossy, appeared duller, matted in places, reflecting the inner dimming of his spirit. His movements, once fluid and confident, became slow and labored, each step carrying the invisible weight of his loss. The usual alertness in his dark eyes, the keen predatory gaze, was replaced by a haunted lassitude, a far-off emptiness that spoke volumes. Lena, tucked away in her remote observation post, meticulously documented every disheartening detail. She compiled her preliminary findings, a testament to Kai's unprecedented behavior, and submitted it to the park management. Her report, cautiously hinting at the possibility of Kai's prolonged grief, was met not with outrage but with formal skepticism. Director Davies, a man in his late 50s, whose career was built on quantifiable data and established protocols, read her observations with a polite but firm frown. Dr. Petrova, he'd said during their teleconference, his voice measured, we appreciate your dedication, but these are highly subjective interpretations. We'll need more quantifiable data, empirical evidence, not anecdotes of a bear mourning. Ranger Miller, another adult in his 50s, echoed the sentiment, suggesting alternative, more scientific explanations for KII's condition. The frustration was a cold, bitter taste in Lena's mouth, but it only solidified her resolve. They saw a bear. She saw a heart in anguish. Despite the institutional resistance, Lena continued her silent vigil. She noticed Kai's patterns, his almost ritualistic slowness. He began following old trails, retracing paths he and Lyra had once shared during healthier seasons. He would pause at specific landmarks, a gnarled spruce by the river, a sun-dappled rock overlooking the valley, a hidden berry patch, places where memories of Lyra must have lingered, unseen but potent. He didn't forage much in these spots, nor did he linger to rest. He simply stood, a colossal quiet presence, as if acknowledging a sacred ground, then moved on with a heavy, deliberate pace. It was a pilgrimage of memory, a map of sorrow etched onto the Alaskan earth. Perhaps you, too, have seen such echoes of loss in the world around you, in places we least expect. These quiet rituals, performed by creatures we deem purely instinctual, challenge our most guarded assumptions about consciousness and connection. Lena watched Kai from a distance, the sun setting, casting long, lonely shadows across the landscape. The sense of isolation for both Lena and Kai is palpable. The sun dipped below the jagged peaks, painting the sky in bruised purples and greys. The air, however, grew heavy, not with the typical chill of evening, but with an oppressive electric stillness. Lena pulled her collar tighter, a strange unease settling over her. Then the sky ripped open. Violent winds shrieked through the valley, tearing at the ancient pines, whipping Lena's hair across her face. Rain lashed down, thick, cold sheets of it, instantly soaking through her gear. She scrambled to secure her camera equipment, pulling tarps taut, her fingers clumsy with the sudden cold. The storm was a beast, roaring, consuming the landscape. She had to find better cover, moving quickly to a rocky overhang, the wind threatening to rip her binoculars from her grasp. From her new, precarious shelter, she scanned for Kai, fearing for his safety in such an onslaught. Through the swirling chaos, a massive shape emerged. Kai. He was not seeking shelter, not retreating. Instead, he moved with an urgent, almost frenzied determination toward a specific patch of earth near the frozen river, precisely where Lyra had vanished. He began to dig, not for food, not for a den. His huge claws tore at the mud and rock, heedless of the driving rain and biting wind. He dug relentlessly, a primeval force against the storm's fury. Lena watched, mesmerized, her heart pounding. What was he doing? Was it a last desperate attempt to find her? The earth flew, mud-splattered. Then Kai paused. He nudged something with his snout. A small, dark object encrusted with mud. A piece of metal, a weathered, torn remnant of Lyra's old tracking collar. The world seemed to tilt. The storm raged, but Lena heard only the frantic beat of her own pulse. Kai picked up the collar fragment gently, so gently, in his massive jaws. He held it, turning his head slightly, as if examining a precious, fragile thing. Then, with a tenderness that defied every scientific textbook Lena had ever read, he carried it a short distance, almost reverently, before lowering it back into a freshly dug hollow. He pushed the earth back over it with his nose and paws, patting it down with deliberate care. A silent, tender ritual. Remembrance. Lena gasped, a sob catching in her throat. Her scientific detachment, the careful objectivity she had cultivated for decades, shattered. This was not survival. This was not instinct. This was a profound act of memory and attachment, a direct, undeniable answer to the question that had plagued her. Can an animal truly grieve? The answer resonated deep within her bones. This was love. She felt the cold seeping into her, felt the rain plastering her hair to her face, but she felt only a profound, heartbreaking clarity. A new understanding bloomed. Lena, soaked and shivering, wiping tears from her eyes, her gaze fixed on the spot where Kai performed his tender ritual. A new understanding blooming within her. The cold rain still clung to Lena's clothes, a persistent chill that mirrored the lingering awe in her spirit. The groundbreaking clarity she'd found at Kai's ritual site, the undeniable evidence of grief, galvanized her. She returned to her remote station, not to rest, but to adapt. The time for passive observation was over. It was time to validate this truth with irrefutable data. Within days, Lena deployed an array of advanced, non-invasive remote camera traps, strategically placed to capture KAI's movements without ever encroaching on his space. An adult technician, a quiet man named Jens, operated a high-altitude drone on her behalf, its gentle hum a distant murmur above the treetops, providing a new, sweeping perspective. Every precaution was taken to maintain the profound distance and minimize any disturbance to KI's solitary vigil. The resulting footage, combined with Lena's meticulous log entries and the chilling, tender images of Kai with Lyra's collar, formed a formidable package. She spent long, tireless hours compiling her findings, weaving the narrative of Kai's unwavering sorrow with the stark scientific details. The moment came to share it, and a profound anxiety settled over her. She sent the comprehensive data, including the raw footage of Kai's ritual, to Dr. Ben Carter, an adult colleague in his 40s whose skepticism she knew well, but whose integrity she also respected. Then she waited. The silence that followed felt deafening, stretching into agonizing hours. When Ben's call finally came, his voice was quiet, almost reverent, utterly devoid of his usual professional caution. He didn't immediately speak of data or protocols. Instead, he simply said, "Lena, I don't know what to say. It's compelling, devastatingly compelling." He admitted the footage challenged everything he had believed, every long-held scientific tenet. He offered his support, unequivocal and earnest, becoming her first trusted ally in a world poised to dismiss her. This quiet triumph, however, came at a cost. The constant vigilance, the relentless analysis, the sheer emotional investment in Kai's quiet suffering began to wear heavily on Lena. Her reflection in the camp's small mirror showed a woman gaunt, shadowed, her eyes carrying the weight of sleepless nights and Kai's deep, enduring pain. Even when she did sleep, Kai's image haunted her dreams. Yet, there was a quiet, steady resolve. On her makeshift desk, amidst the maps and data, lay a small, smooth river stone, picked from the bank near Kai's territory. It was a tangible link, a quiet echo of the weathered collar Kai had found, a constant, weighty reminder of the profound truth she now carried. Lena and Ben connected again via video call, the pixelated image of his face a welcome sight. They spoke little, their conversation punctuated by long, understanding silences. They were two minds, now converging on a revolutionary truth, sharing a moment of silent, profound understanding, even as Lena's deep fatigue was evident in the way she leaned against her hand, her eyes heavy. The weight of shared understanding with Ben did little to lift the bone-deep weariness that clung to Lena. She had sought an ally, found one, and in doing so, unknowingly opened a conduit to the outside world. The first tremor came subtly, a screenshot from a local online news outlet, Alaskan Sentinel, forwarded by an anonymous contact. It featured a blurry, distant image of KAI, captured by the drone Ben's technician had operated, alongside a speculative headline questioning the unprecedented sadness of a wild grizzly. The article, managed by a seasoned adult editor, hinted at controversial observations by a certain wildlife ethologist. Then the floodgates opened. Online forums and social media platforms, buzzing with adult users, erupted. Some voices, raw with empathy, were deeply moved, seeing in Kai's image a reflection of their own losses. They spoke of the universal language of sorrow. But others, far louder, derided it as blatant anthropomorphizing, sentimental nonsense, a dangerous blurring of lines between human emotion and animal instinct. Lena found herself at the epicenter of a digital storm, receiving both heartfelt messages of support and scathing, often cruel, criticism that questioned her scientific rigor and even her sanity. The intellectual battleground she had anticipated was now public, chaotic, and intensely personal. This public clamor swiftly drew the unwanted attention of park management. A formal email arrived, cool and dispassionate, convening a review board. Concerns were cited: unscientific methods, potential for public interference with wildlife, and unjustified emotional projections. It was the academic tribunal she had feared, a direct challenge to her career and her convictions. Lena, steeling herself, compiled her meticulous logs, the detailed footage, Ben's cautious but firm corroboration. When Ben himself flew out to stand by her, his presence was a quiet, potent reassurance. Amidst the swirling vortex of calls, emails, and preparations for the review, Lena found herself needing Kai more than ever, not just as a subject, but as a silent testament. She retreated to a remote observation point, binoculars pressed to her eyes. Kai was there, near a sun-drenched meadow, a place Lyra had loved to forage for berries in warmer seasons. He wasn't moving, merely resting, his massive body a study in stillness, soaking in the light. It wasn't a place for food now, but for memory. He seemed to draw a quiet comfort from the very air of that shared space, a subtle, almost imperceptible easing of his perpetual tension. It was a private moment, a quiet reaffirmation that Lena was not mistaken. This profound connection, this enduring remembrance, was real. When faced with the unfamiliar, do we choose to dismiss or to truly see? The day of the review board arrived, sterile and unforgiving. A panel of experienced park administrators and senior scientists, all adults in their 50s and 60s, sat before her, their expressions a mixture of skepticism and weary obligation. Lena, flanked by a quietly resolute Ben, presented her findings. She detailed Kai's behavioral deviations, the data points, the footage of the collar ritual. She spoke with a measured voice rooted in years of field experience until, finally, she set aside the charts and graphs. She looked directly at the stern faces before her, her voice softening, yet gaining an undeniable power. "This isn't about proving an animal possesses human emotion," she said, her gaze steady. "It's about acknowledging the complexity of life, the depth of bonds that exist beyond our current understanding. It's about recognizing suffering and asking ourselves, as stewards of this planet, if our scientific objectivity should ever blind us to the ethical imperative of empathy. What if simply to see is enough?" Her words hung in the silence. The silence of the review board chamber had been profound, her impassioned plea hanging heavy, a fragile beacon against the edifice of protocol. Lena had hoped, prayed, that her words, steeped in both data and raw empathy, would penetrate. But the wilderness cares little for human arguments or bureaucratic mandates. Outside the insulated world of academia, the Alaskan winter arrived with a brutal, premature fury. The first heavy snows descended not as gentle flakes, but as an angry, swirling onslaught, signaling a season that promised to be crueler than any in recent memory. The landscape, once merely frosted, was now buried under a suffocating white blanket, the ancient pines groaning under the weight. Kai's condition worsened with terrifying speed. Lena watched from her remote post, her heart a leaden weight in her chest. His usually magnificent coat, once sleek and commanding, was now dull and matted, plastered to ribs that had become shockingly prominent beneath his fur. Every movement was a visible effort. The powerful, fluid gait of the dominant grizzly was replaced by a slow, labored shuffle, each step a testament to his fading strength. He moved like an old, wounded king, his head bowed lower than ever, his spirit seemingly crushed by the relentless tide of his grief. He was dangerously thin, a ghost of his former self. Lena faced a moral crisis that gnawed at her waking thoughts and haunted her brief, restless sleeps. Scientific protocol, the very bedrock of her profession, screamed non-intervention. The wild had its own laws, its own brutal, beautiful cycle of life and death, but Kai's life was clearly, undeniably at risk. His profound despondency, his unwavering loyalty to Lyra's memory, was literally killing him. How could she stand by, a silent witness to his slow demise, when she knew, with an agonizing certainty, that it was not merely natural selection at play, but a broken heart? She contacted Ben, her voice strained, brittle with exhaustion and fear. "He's fading, Ben," she rasped, the words catching in her throat. "His body can't sustain this. He's grieving himself to death." Ben, ever the pragmatist, was cautious, but the conviction in Lena's voice, coupled with the damning evidence she'd sent, had chipped away at his skepticism. "What do you propose, Lena?" he asked, his voice quiet, acknowledging the unprecedented situation. They debated options, their conversation a frantic dance on the knife edge of ethics, minimal, highly controlled forms of support, non-intrusive, respectful, a lifeline, not a cage. Kai, in a desperate, heartbreaking attempt to reclaim some semblance of his former existence, made weak, unsuccessful attempts to hunt. Lena observed him lunge at a flash of salmon in the churning, icy river, a ghost of his old power, only to miss wildly, stumbling. He recovered slowly, his body simply unable to summon the explosive energy required. He sat on the bank, shivering, the effort draining him further, a stark reminder of the ultimate cost of his grief. The brutal mathematics of survival were closing in. As if to mirror Lena's internal turmoil, a fierce blizzard descended, swallowing the valley whole. Wind howled like a banshee, tearing at her remote shelter, rattling the windows until she feared they would shatter. Snow lashed against the glass in thick, blinding sheets, transforming the world into a maelstrom of white. Kai's familiar silhouette, a solitary sentinel of sorrow, became obscured, then swallowed by the swirling, merciless flakes. Lena watched Kai through the swirling snow, his silhouette fading into the whiteout, a silent prayer escaping her lips, a moment of utter helplessness and urgent resolve. That silent prayer was not for deliverance, but for strength, for a way forward. The blizzard, a furious maelstrom of white, had finally begun to recede by the pre-dawn light, leaving behind a world hushed and heavy with fresh snow. In the fragile calm, Lena and Ben, their faces etched with sleepless nights and profound worry, gathered a small, trusted team of adult park rangers and technicians. Maps spread across a makeshift table, marked with KII's most frequent secluded routes and preferred resting spots, became the blueprints for their desperate hope. The plan was audacious, fraught with ethical peril, yet born of absolute necessity: to leave high-calorie, natural food sources, specifically large cuts of elk meat and frozen salmon, carefully sourced to mimic KAI's wild diet, in precise, concealed locations he was known to frequent. This was not about domestication, but about offering a lifeline, a chance for his grieving body to sustain itself. Under the cloak of a freezing night, the operation unfolded with a tension that hummed beneath the skin. Snowmobiles were parked miles away, their engines silenced. The team, all adults, moved on snowshoes, each breath misting thick in the frigid air. Every movement was precise, silent, choreographed by satellite-linked GPS and Lena's intimate knowledge of KI's patterns. They worked swiftly, depositing the heavy packages deep within drifts, near ancient pines, close enough for a hungry bear to scent, yet far enough to avoid any association with human presence. No direct contact, no traces left behind, just the silent offering. The cold bit through layers of clothing, a constant, gnawing reminder of the stakes. The rangers, seasoned professionals, understood the gravity of their mission, their faces grim but resolute. Lena, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs, knew this was a gamble, a line blurred between observation and intervention that could redefine her career, or tragically, end Kai's quiet vigil. They retreated into the deeper hours of night, leaving only their footprints in the snow, soon to be erased by the wind. Early next morning, the world was bathed in a pale, sapphire light. From her remote observation post, Lena fixed her high-powered binoculars on a snow-laden ridge, her breath held captive in her chest. Hours crawled by, each minute an eternity. Then, a dark, lumbering shape emerged from the trees. Kai. His movements were still slow, labored, but a faint scent, foreign yet compelling, must have reached him. He paused, massive head lifting, nostrils flaring, testing the air. His initial suspicion was palpable, a low growl rumbling deep within his chest, a flicker of his old, wary self. But then, hunger, an ancient primal need, overrode caution. He moved towards one of the hidden caches, unearthed it with a powerful, desperate swipe of his paw. His consumption was slow, almost reverent, each bite a struggle, yet a necessary act of survival. A deep, guttural sound, not a growl, but something akin to a sigh escaped him. The first flicker of his old self was almost imperceptible. As Kai finished the last morsel, a subtle change rippled through his massive frame. His posture, for the first time in months, seemed to ease. His head, usually bowed in profound desolation, lifted a fraction higher. His ears, once dulled, twitched with a hint of his old alertness, processing the distant sounds of the awakening wilderness. It was a fragile, quiet victory, a whisper of life returning to a body consumed by sorrow. This was not rescue, not domestication. This was a bridge, built on understanding and a desperate hope. It was a testament to the profound, unspoken language of empathy that transcended species. Later, as Ki finally moved away, leaving behind disturbed snow and the faint scent of sustenance, Lena and Ben shared a look of shared relief and profound exhaustion, watching Kai from a distant screen, a silent acknowledgement of the thin line they walked and the life they helped sustain.